MAISA, and I am here with my partner, Rusty Anderson. So, Rusty, if you'll take a minute to introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I work alongside Heather on the MAISA early math team, along with myself, Trish, Jess, and Sonia, who also are on the early math team, are probably here as well. Good to be here with you all.
All right. And before we get started, we just want to share that the recording we are recording. So you just heard that. And it will be shared with everybody that's registered. We're also going to post the recording on our website. So on the math website, as well as the literacy website and the landing page that you'll get a chance to explore later today. Today's objectives. So the things in purple are the things that Rusty and I are planning to do with you today, and the green are the things that we're asking for you to engage with today. So today we will provide an overview of what this work will look like. And when we say this work, we're talking the Math and Literacy Collaborative. We will collect questions to create an FAQ to share out. So we've already started to work on one. We'll gather some more questions from you today and then be able to share that out in the near future. While you're here with us today, if you could please take the time to consider how this work might look in your local context. You'll think about who you need to communicate with next beyond this webinar. And then you'll also indicate your interest moving forward in a form that we'll share at the end of today. In our time today, we're going to start by exploring and setting the stage for the collaborative and why this work is critical in our space and time right now. We'll move into an overview of the system. Then we'll go into some additional details and we'll wrap up our time together by thinking about the next steps, that FAQ and how to contribute questions to that, and that interest survey. Many of you that have worked with our MESA teams in the past are familiar with this quote. And I'm just going to ask you to read that and reflect for a minute about how this quote is inspiring to you and what it's meant to you over the past year in our work. All right, so we know that powerful learning for children requires powerful learning for educators as well. We talk so much about how we want better things for our children and we want high quality learning for the kids in our classrooms. And if we want our children's learning to be different, we've got to take a different approach for the educators in our systems as well. So thinking about the focus of this collaborative, the what, we're working to develop systems to improve student outcomes. And with that, thinking about that last slide, also to improve and change how we're working with our adult learners in our systems. The why, we know that coaching alone won't work. We know that new programs alone won't work. We know that professional learning alone won't work. But when we create these systems of coherence, that's what's going to work and that's what's going to move us forward as a building, as a district, as an ISD, and as a state. So when we think about what does that mean and what does that look like, we're working to enable some local enabling conditions. And those include the things that you'll see across the bottom of the screen there. A leadership team, educator learning, and that means all the educators in our system. A specialist or a coach working within our buildings and our settings. Shared vision and commitments, and cycles and labs. And ultimately underneath that, you'll see an emphasis on deprivatizing practice and growing together. This is our systems focused work. In our design, we're bringing some different elements and we're leaning into some of the things we know. So we know that math has started to engage in some of this work over the last year and they're seeing success. We know that coaching cycles that have effective implementation make a difference. We know that there are high quality literacy materials out there, are lists, people are purchasing materials, and we know that there are assessment lists for literacy as well. We know that we have expertise at the state and we have teams at MESA to help support this learning. We also know that there are tools and funding that can help support this work with you today. And there are systems and practices that are ready to scale up. We also know that MTSS is the foundation of everything we do. And it's a lens that we're bringing into this work as we move forward.
Thanks, Heather. What you see on the screen are what we utilize as design principles for the system that we're developing and have developed. Many of you have probably run into these in one way or another. If they're new for you and for everyone, let's just take a second to read what's on the screen, and then we'll maybe pick out a couple of things that feel really important about this work. The one that I'll highlight in this, which will show up here in a little bit also, is the blue hexagon that is naming coherence and the importance of coherence from all of the work that we're doing at the local level, the ISD level, and the state level. And that is a hexagon and a design principle that I think we'll continue to hear this morning and then think hard about as we do this work next year. What we're going to get into is thinking about this system, sharing some of the details, and connecting to these design principles throughout. The way that we're going to do that first, Heather has helped us get into the first chunk of the agenda. We're going to move into the next now, which is an overview of the system. And we'll be able to go to the landing page, which I'll throw in chat now, that will help us have an idea of some of the big picture balcony view of what the system is. And then we're going to give you a chance to explore that for a minute or two. And then Heather and I really are going to use this landing page to articulate the details that you all are probably here to learn a little bit more about. So what you see in the chat, and many of you are going there now, is the landing page. I'm going to give us maybe 1 to 2 minutes just to peruse what's there. There's a lot of things there. It's going to surface questions for you, and that's great. You might make connections if you've been connected to some of this work over the past couple of years, especially in mathematics. Take a minute or two to just peruse the pages that are there, knowing that we're going to spend time unpacking each of the pieces of this landing page. Take a second to review. And take another 15 seconds. So this landing page will be the place to go for all things around this collaborative. This is the version that it's currently in. As new things surface, as new tools are created, new links, everything will be posted on this landing page. And before we leave today, Heather and I will take us to the website and show everyone how to find the link to this thing so that you don't have to try to pin that one that I threw in chat. So know that it's publicly available on the math and literacy websites. We'll show you how to get there. As you see on the screen, big picture, this is about coherence in the work, in both the what, like how we work, and the content of the work across the state of Michigan in both literacy and mathematics. As you see on the screen, there are specific roles that we're going to dive into a little bit deeper, but big picture, the literacy and math teams support the learning of the facilitator network and create the tools and resources that those roles need to support local districts to be able to do this work. And those facilitator network people, both math and literacy, which we'll talk about here in a bit, they support the local district work and they help support the local enabling conditions. So the leadership team, the educator learning, the commitments and values, and also the cycles and labs. And again, we're going to peel apart all of those layers of the system this morning. One thing that I think will be really helpful for all of us is that this is not for everyone. So an opportunity today is to learn about what this is and have good conversation with those in your context, both at the ISD and local district level, to decide whether or not this is something that is right for your system at this moment in time. So that's one big takeaway, I think, is that you're going to have information to be able to make informed decisions and talk with the people that you hope to talk to around whether or not this is the right work for you and your context next school year. In math, we do know, so I'll kind of talk about the target audience for math, and then Heather, I'll kick it to you to talk about the literacy. In math, we know that this work has been happening in ISDs and local districts for the last couple of years, and it's an opportunity to continue that work. So if you're an ISD leader who has a 23H district and has been doing the work, this is an opportunity to continue that work next school year. And also, it's an opportunity to onboard new districts. So, if you're an ISD leader and want to have new districts jump in, this is an opportunity to do that. If you're a local district leader, this is a chance for you to enter as well. And one thing that'll come up later, but I'll just say it now because it feels really important. If we're a local district leader, it is vital in the mathematics system to connect with your ISD leaders, specifically, probably your GELN member, to talk about what this could look like to partner both with the ISD and with MAISA in this project. Heather, what would you say about literacy?
For literacy, this is for teams, building teams that have a literacy framework and loose and tight expectations for implementing curriculum. So many of you in this call have engaged with us, either Mesa or LLN or LLN and Mesa together to create a literacy framework and a loose and tight. Some of you have done that with your ISDs or as an ISD have done that locally. And so we're looking for buildings that have that literacy framework and loose and tight in place as a launching pad to start the work. And there will be an August opportunity to create that. And then there will be a few throughout the year next year to help prepare for a second cohort. So just know that if you don't join right now, it doesn't mean that that can't happen in the future. And then local district or building that are using any resource from the approved list. So literacy framework, loose and tight expectations, and a resource from the approved list. And as we go through the learning, you'll see why those pieces are critical to as a launching pad to enter into this space.
What you see on the screen is the actual goal that we have systems to support adult learning at the local level in place, not only in place, but are supported by all the different organizations and roles around them. So think about this work as local district work, and ISD leaders and MAISA leaders support those enabling conditions and resources to bring them to life at the local level. That's the big thing here, is that local districts we will help to develop the enabling conditions, which really is the adult learning system. So you'll have a leadership team that either many of you probably have one if you're a local district leader, or you will create one to support this work. You will have time and space for teachers to learn for both math and literacy. The content of that learning will be supported by the facilitator network and the MAISA literacy and math teams. And you will have spaces for teachers to learn that deprivatize their practice, like coaching cycles, learning labs, and some other structures that support that local district work. Again, here are the local district enabling conditions. I'm just going to keep those on the screen, and we're just going to pause because you've already been drinking from a fire hose, and we're probably not going to answer every question that will populate in chat, but let's just take a second to stop the talk and post something in chat about what stands out so far, and what feels really muddy or questions that you have. So take a second to just throw something in chat, and we'll watch those populate. We'll probably pick a couple out as well. What stands out? What questions are surfacing? Kylie, great question. Who is the facilitator network? We'll share a little bit more detail on that to come. Kylie, you are familiar, and many of you that are on the call this morning are familiar as well, because we'll think about that similarly to our Math Leader Network that we've had the last couple of years. Carrie, good question about 23H and possibly opening to other districts. We will chat about that a little bit. Bridget's naming an excitement around collaboration and bringing both math and literacy systems closer together at the state level, which is feedback that we've heard for a few years now, especially. And so this is an opportunity in our first try to bring a literacy system and a math system. We've been working in parallel ways, and this is an intentional system to bring those two systems closer together. Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, lots of questions about the details, like what's the commitment? Who needs to be there? How much time? We are going to talk about some of those things, knowing that that's like really important, especially as we're planning for next year. Carrie's asking literacy or math or both. Good question. We think there's a world in which we can do both in this work. And also, we have an opportunity to select either literacy or math. Heather, there's
I,
questions on the approved list,
yes.
some literacy specific things. I know that's
Yeah.
coming up, but maybe you want to give a short story now that'll help us connect.
Absolutely. So I saw both a question from two different questions. One was, do we need something from the list? And the answer is yes, something from the list, whether that's comprehensive or just one element. There's the foundational, and then there's the language piece. So one of those, something from the list, and then as is, or is it's updated? It's as it's updated. So we know that that list is continuing to be updated. So thank you for both of those questions.
Yeah, and Andrew, your comment in chat is a really important one, and it'll show up again on a slide probably here in the near future. But creating a system that's one size fits all is impossible for the state because every ISD and every local district has different resources, is a different size. So there is a world that it is encouraged to adapt this content to your local context. So know that one of our design principles is local adaptation. We value local adaptation in ways that still align with the vision of the work. So know that, yes, it's possible to adapt. Many of you are going to be thinking, oh, we can't get subs, or we don't even have enough teachers yet. So, like, know that we work with the people who are carrying out this work across the year to think about what does adaptation look like in principled ways that align to the vision. All right,
Um,
go ahead, Heather.
Just one more, and I see a lot of the questions that we will answer, as Rusty said, but the one about how can I communicate with other people in my district or with my ISD if I'm a local and I'm reaching out that way. Um, this recording will be available to you. So anybody that's registered, you'll have this, and then that landing page. We're hoping that between those two resources, those will help you. And then we also have an FAQ that we're gathering from some questions that came up recently and then from today that you would then also be able to go through those with whoever you need to communicate with about this opportunity.
Thanks, Heather. All right, let's continue forward knowing that we'll pause again here in a bit and see what new things we've learned and what new questions we might have. As you see on the screen, these are the things that we hope will be in place at the local district level, and we'll support the building of these if that's needed. The enabling conditions are the things that help us build the adult learning system at the local level. And many of you are probably wondering, well, what's the actual learning? So on the next slide, you'll see just a short summary of both in mathematics and in literacy, what the focus is. So I'll give us a second to read those, and then Heather and I will say a couple words about each of them. If you have been a part of the mathematics work over the last couple of years, these words are not new to us. It's been our mission and our vision for the last couple of years to support the same things. If you are newer to the math work that's been happening, that is not a problem at all. On the screen, you see some summaries of what we've been working on and what we plan to continue working on as we enter the next school year. Again, we can continue this work with districts who have been a part of it in mathematics the last couple of years, and we can start this work with districts who are interested with the support of their ISD. What you see on the left are kind of the four circles that we've been thinking really hard about over the last couple of years in mathematics: discussion structures, mathematics content, talk and listening moves, and participation. All of those things are interconnected. The image on the right represents kind of our quick summary of how we do that. Our big goal is to open space for children to share their thinking and then have and support educators to facilitate discussion around that lead or supports children to get to specific mathematical goals. So this is a quick summary of the work. Happy to say more about that if anyone wants to reach out and talk out the details of what the focus looks like in mathematics. Heather, what would you say about the literacy work?
So we know that we've got assessments in place and curriculum in place, but a lot of us have been through a process where we've adapted a curricular resource or we're using a curricular resource and it looks different all across our system, or it hasn't gone the best that it can. And so that's where our instructional systems is coming in. And we're going to focus in on how do we provide systems and those local enabling conditions that help us to really make the most of those resources and our best practices and really combine it into a comprehensive picture. So when we think about what's happening at the classroom level, we saw Rusty's visual of what math is looking at. When we look at what we're doing within literacy, we're going to take that literacy framework and you're going to focus in on aspects of your literacy framework, and we're going to do an inquiry cycle. So we're going to look at what did we call out in our literacy framework and our loose and tights with our curricular resource, and to help us have some shared understanding across the various curricular resources. We'll be using the playbooks and our essentials to help us look at that, like what is that best practice. But we will be leaning into the materials that you have and help us to have consistency, clarity, and a shared vision around what that looks like within our classrooms, and across the building. And so on the screen, you'll see a couple of examples. Please know those are not endorsements. I'm just putting a couple examples up there for us to think about. But our goal is really to look at, for example, we're going to move into the phonics, word study, and morphology aspect of our literacy framework. We're going to examine what does that look like? What do our loose and tights look like when we look at that paired with our curricular resource? And then how do we put those systems in place for the learning and deprivatizing practice locally as a leadership team to support it in the classroom? So when we think about it from a team level and a systems level, here are some things when we think about the enabling conditions on the left-hand side. Here are some examples of routines, tools, or processes that we will be thinking about and working through in our time together. So working on distributing instructional leadership across our entire system, team functioning skills and how we work together as a team, feedback loops, data collection, monitoring how we're doing with our instruction. We'll do this through inquiry cycles, which you'll see below, but we're going to support the educator learning, so growth at all levels. So our teachers and our administrators will be in on this learning. We'll also tie into some of the PA 146 requirements, such as how are we going to address and make changes to our IRIP system and what that looks like within our building. We'll spend time really honing in on what does our coaching system look like and how do we provide clarity around that, what it is and what it isn't, and what is my coach doing to support our building overall, but our inquiry cycles. And then we have this shared vision and commitment. So this is where that literacy framework and loose and tights come in. Again, we want you to have that as you enter into this space because a lot of us have done that work. And so it's kind of that entry point. We'll have look fors and inquiry cycles where we really hone in and say, what does our foundational skills look like in our building? How do we have that shared vision and how do we coach around it? How do we do learning labs around that? How do we go deep? And then those cycles and labs at the bottom, which help us to think about those design principles we saw at the beginning, adult learning principles, and to privatizing that practice with job embedded learning so we can all grow together. So I just put a couple examples of what some of those tools look like to give you an idea. I was with someone yesterday and they mentioned that when we were talking about a literacy framework, they didn't know what we were talking about until they saw the picture and they said, oh, now I know. So I just put a couple of screens up here. This is an example of what the literacy framework looks like. calling out different aspects of what is happening in each of our classrooms for that shared commitment. Examples of loose and tight, some of these are filled out and some are blank, so you can kind of get a feel for those. An inquiry cycle, you can see that there's an inquiry question, there's a focus area, we talk about metrics, and then we're assigning work with dates, status, who's doing it, what are we doing, and then places for comments. And we would do this multiple times throughout the year where we are really honing in on specific aspects of our instruction across the entire building. And then here's an example of when we get into coaching plans and really defining what our coaching system looks like. So there's complete clarity around the coach's role in alignment to how it supports educators in the classroom. From that systems lens, as we lean into that, it does help us to think through how we can support you with PA 146. So some of this work is going to support the enabling conditions are going to help PA 146 implementation. And so, for example, I'll call out just a couple of them, but when we're working with our leadership team, we know that PA 146 calls for reading leadership teams at the school that's collaboratively working to set the direction of the literacy work, right? So this work in itself is going to help us with that. We're also going to look at how we're doing with intervention and IREPs and thinking about a school-wide MTSS structure. We're leaning into that principal and educator learning. I want to be clear that this does not count for Section 7 of PA 146, but we will help you to think about how are we ensuring that our teachers are getting learning and what are we doing with that learning that is aligned to PA 146. Thinking about the coach and what their work is, that shared vision and commitments really helps us to lean into having reading instruction and curriculum materials that are evidence-based, focused on students' reading skills. So we'll spend time with that and actually making sure that it's happening across our buildings. That'll be a lot of our work together. And then those cycles and labs really help us to lean into what this looks like in our building, as well as ongoing cycles of implementation, observation, feedback that's connected to classroom practice. So these elements, by leaning into these enabling conditions, by leaning into this, we're actually supporting some of that PA 146 work within your system as well.
Heather, we had a couple of questions in chat. Feel free to respond if you wish. One around loose tight. Can you just say a little bit more about that? That's new language for our math
Absolutely.
community, especially. And I bet you
Yeah.
have some words that you could say about it. And then the other one is around inquiry cycle. And is that the same as instructional rounds? So maybe loose tight, can you just say some words about that? And then also inquiry cycle if you feel comfortable.
Yes, and I love these questions, so thank you for asking. I'll start with loose tight. And those of you who are have been in LLM, this would be familiar with you. Some of you may have done loose tights in other ways, and we call them like non-negotiables or gold standards. There's different language for the loose tight. Partnering with LLM, and this past year we've used the loose tight language, and it's really defining that for each element of our instruction or each area of our instruction, what are we really tight about? What has to be consistent across my classroom to the next classroom to the next grade level? Those are things like the amount of time that we're spending on a particular area, the important pieces that are happening in every classroom, regardless of where that student is. And a lot of it leans into like that guaranteed and viable curriculum, right? As well as the practices that are happening. So we've got those tights. And then that loose is really that teacher discretionary space of where do I still have choice or options to add to or change? And it's where do I have more autonomy? But that I like to think of, as someone shared before, that they're promises to one another, they're commitments that we're all making to ensure are happening across our classroom. Those are our tights. And then the second question, Rusty, the second question was, help me.
Around inquiry cycles, are they
Thank
similar
you.
to instructional rounds? Maybe just
Sure.
say a little bit more about inquiry cycle.
Yeah, so an inquiry cycle and an implementation plan is where we focus on a question of or an area within our instruction. So I've been using foundational skills. So let's say it's the engaged reading and the interactive read aloud. So in literacy, we might be focusing on our interactive read aloud, and our inquiry cycle is what does this look like, sound like across our buildings? And that's going to include thinking about how do we do some professional learning around that? How do we get into each other's classrooms and do some learning around what interactive read aloud looks like? It's going to mean developing look fors. It's going to mean collecting data. So it's different from an instructional round, and it's an 8 to 12 week cycle where we're going through and we're going deep in one area to provide consistency and coherence across our space around what this practice looks like. And at its core, it's really thinking about clarity, clarity of instruction and what's expected and what's best practice.
Thanks, Heather.
If that's not helpful and you need a little bit more, there's a couple of, if that lifts questions, please put them in the chat so that I know to go a little further.
So I just talked about some of the specific things for the literacy work, and I think it's important to name that though we have created this system with the design principles in mind across math and literacy, the system will be very similar. The content of the system, though, will be different, and Heather just named some of the things that the literacy collaborative side of the system will work on. And it's no surprise to any of us that literacy has a ton of policy right now and things that everyone is trying to figure out, specifically around PA 146 and some of the other surrounding things. And what Heather's naming is that this literacy system is going to support the work of PA 146 and support ISDs and local districts to bring that work to life. Mathematics does not have that policy currently. So the actual content of each of the systems, they will not be exactly the same. They will be slightly different. And at the bigger picture level, the design principles, the enabling conditions, and the actual system of how we get content and learning from the state level to the local district level will be similar. But the content of those things will be different because of all of the policy and literacy.
Rusty, before we move to this next slide, I just want to lift that a couple of my early literacy colleagues also put in the chat some helpful comments that can add additional clarity. So Rich said must do's and may do's. That's another way to think about the loose tights. And then also Melissa Marie wrote creating equitable, consistent opportunities to learn for all children while giving teachers choice as well. So those are two other ways to think about that. And when we do those inquiry cycles, it's really how do we get better at this together as a staff? Our whole building's going to focus in this area. So just a little extra clarity on that.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks, team. All right, let's continue forward. We're going to unpack and talk a little bit about the enabling conditions, a couple of them, so that we have a little bit more detail, and then we'll maybe pause and just populate some things in chat again. Andrew's question earlier was about adaptation, and I think that this slide is really speaking to that, that at the bottom middle of the screen, you see what I said earlier, which is there is no one-size-fits-all system for a state. We know that there are things that can work for everyone, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be adapted. So two of the design principles that kind of live in tension on the screen as we build the system are local adaptation. We know we have to have it because there's no one size fits all that works. And we're also trying to create coherence in both the ways of working and the content that we're working on. So those things are what we're really thinking hard about, is how do we allow local adaptation in ways that still preserve coherence? That's like the big idea of what's to come. And the way that we're thinking about doing that in the analogy that we use is this little cassette player that brings us back to the mid 80s, probably. So enjoy that feel for just a minute. We think about these things in the enabling conditions, specifically leadership, team, and educator learning, as cassettes. And so what our teams are going to be working on are building the cassettes so that they could be picked up and plugged into any staff meeting you might have or any principal meeting you might have if you're at the ISD level. These things will be created and utilized so that they can be put into the system where it makes sense for your context. Some of you at the local district might have grade level team meetings where this could be brought in. Some of you might have staff meetings once a month or late starts or whatever the things are. You have spaces that exist that these cassettes could be plugged into. And so we're going to talk about what that could look like on the next few slides. So here's an example of a cassette. I'll give you a second just to read some of the design ideas that we're thinking through as we build these cassettes over the coming year. So again, they're going to be designed to be able to be used in a context that you already have, a structure that you already have. for face-to-face conversations, whether it's at the ISD level or the local district level. We know they need to be flexible. We know they need to be able to be picked up, and they have everything in them that someone might need to facilitate it. So they might include slide decks. They might include videos of meetings. They might include tools that you would use. They might include chapters of a book that people might read. All of the stuff that you would need will be in these cassettes, or what we're calling currently PL tools. What that looks like is an example of the leadership team. And Heather, I'll let you get started and I'll add on any things that stand out.
Sure. So our leadership team meetings is that we'll have 1.5 hours a month where we meet with the leadership teams. It'll be streamed into either your ISD. So when we think about this, there might be an ISD that has several teams in place and they're supporting that work. So if you've got several districts, you could come to the ISD and work together and share learning around this. But an hour-and-a-half meeting once per month, it'll either go to the ISD or to a local district and right to your building. And it's 45 minutes of system learning facilitated by MESA team and researchers. And we know that a lot of this learning will hone in on those design principles that you saw at the beginning of the slide deck today. And then you'll have 45 minutes of problem resolving routine centered on teaching and learning. So there will be a routine that we log off, or everybody goes into their own space, their breakout rooms, and you work on this problem solving routine that allows you to reflect on what's currently happening in your building and barriers that are coming up, and then how to solve those problems moving forward. Literacy is a little bit different. So we have those hour-and-a-half meetings once per month, but 4 of those days are going to be full days. And that's where we're going to get into that work that we talked about previously with building some of those documents and some of those systems work. And we really want to be thoughtful about the roster of who's on our leadership team. So when we think about the leadership team, we need to have a principal on board. You should have your specialist or your coach, other teachers in your building that are, you might want to have an early L representative, an upper L representative. You might want an interventionist or special education teacher that's on that team. But we want to have, it has to have a principal, it has to have a coach or a specialist, and then teacher representation there as well. And I know earlier there's a question around who needs to be here from the district. There will be, for those of you at a local district, sometimes the district curriculum director might want to be on the team or attend a lot of those days. That's up to you and thinking about your own local system, but the district should definitely be aware of what's occurring in these building meetings as well, in these leadership teams. Rusty, what would you add?
The roster of the leadership team is important. Heather just named specific roles that are really helpful and intentional to have on a leadership team. And this is another example of where adaptation can and will take place. We have heard over the last couple of years in the math work, as we've helped build leadership teams, is that in really, really small districts where we have a super principal, I think is sometimes what they're called, where we wear 1,000 hats and then we have 1 or 2 teachers per grade level. It's hard to pull people out because you're pulling out the whole grade level in some cases. So know that there are and is guidance on who should be on the leadership team. And if you are only able to have a principal and the math or literacy facilitator or leader, that is better than not having a leadership team at all. So there's this perfect world scenario where everyone has all the roles at the table, and sometimes that's not possible. So don't let that be the reason why you say, oh, we can't do this because we can't get all these people on the leadership team. We are flexible and adapt that work. The other question that surfaced around this, Jenny, in chat, which maybe people are answering it now, I'll speak to it, is the leadership teams are going to be structured differently than the past 2 years, what we're comfortable in math. What we are planning is to have them facilitated live at a specific time during the month. And a lot of you are thinking that's not possible for us, and we know that. So that time will work for some leadership teams, whether you join as a leadership team at the local district or your ISD pulls together all the leadership teams at the ISD. That time might work for you, and that's great. It's not going to work for everyone. That time does not exist. So we're going to take the recording of the content and turn it into something that, Jenny, you would be able to take the same content to your leadership team at a time that works for them.
Thank you, Rusty. And that's the importance of those last slides with those cassettes too, right? That's how we're helping to meet our local district's needs, local building needs, is by using those cassettes as well and those recordings. We'll also have teacher learning routines. So these teacher learning routines, they're about 45 minutes of learning. What we're asking is that there is a space that you are holding somewhere locally. So you would determine when this happens. Rusty's mentioned some of these already, like it could be a staff meeting, it could be a grade level meeting, it could be a network meeting, but thinking about what's already in place, but reserving time within your month that some educator learning can happen with teachers and with your principal or who on your staff needs that learning. And it would be facilitated by the math or literacy leader. So whoever is that facilitator and coming to those meetings, they would be doing that at a time that works for you locally. But we're asking you to think about how might I find about 45 minutes once a month to dig into some learning that's coming out of this network. And again, we want to lean into that maximum flexibility and your system and what's happening locally. Rusty, what might you add?
Again, flexibility is going to be important. Thinking flexibly about how this could work, especially if we're a district who is adopting new instructional materials for literacy, which is a lot of us in the state, probably. Those things are going to be a focus. So if we're going to say we're going to focus on both literacy and math and support that work, we're going to have to think really flexibly about how we can support educators to not drink from the fire hose, to do real learning at a pace that works for them around this content. So Heather, I appreciate you saying about 45 minutes, and how that looks in each local district will be very different.
I did have a question about district team or building team, and we want the building teams involved, but it's going to depend on your district, your local context again, because like for example, we were just working, and I'm going to go into an example of the literacy framework series that we've just done recently. We had a bigger district that wanted to have consistency across all of their buildings. And so working with the district curriculum director, they brought representation for one team that could then help support at the buildings. And representation came, and then those would go back and work with their building teams. So thinking about your own structure, it may be a building team. You might invite your district curriculum director if you would like, just having those conversations locally to say, what does this look like for us and our system, and what do we know about our system? And if you want help thinking through that, I know both Rusty and I would be available to think through your system with you as you're engaging in this work.
Heather, I think I could probably answer this question, but Shannon just put one in chat that I think is a quick answer for you. She's wondering 45 minutes once a month for leadership teams to meet, 4 full days for literacy. And so Shannon, I'll add on and then Heather jump in. We're currently structuring the leadership team for 90 minutes. 45 of that will be around systems learning. So it'll be common learning time for us, which will be led by Dr. Allison Fox-Resnick, if you've worked with her before. And then the second 45 minutes will be a routine for the leadership team to talk about what's actually happening in classrooms and how we can continue to better support teachers to get better at teaching. So think about leadership team as 90 minutes, 45 new learning around systems, 45 of a routine to talk about instruction and how we can better support teachers. And then the 4 full days, I don't know if you want to just say more about those specific days. And I know we have a calendar that we can look at in a bit.
Yeah, so the 4 full days that's going to be literacy specific. And so if we go back, hold on. If we go back to this type of work, this is what we're doing in those full days. Are these things here. And they're time intensive. And so being able to have that dedicated time to dig into that work is really important for those days. And that's why that's that extended time.
Thanks, Heather.
Mhm. Okay. And then we also have, again, at the local, up to your system, what's happening locally, but part of this work is ensuring that you have time for literacy coaching cycles. So if you have a coach that's 35A funded, um, they are already working on coaching cycles, and we want to ensure that you've got time dedicated to building wide focus coaching cycles that's related back to the inquiry cycle in our implementation plan. So again, I used an example of what that might look like if we were all focused on interactive read aloud for 8 to 12 weeks. We've got some coaching cycles that are happening in relation to that focus, in relation to that interactive read aloud. And then we also need time for math and literacy learning labs. And so the learning labs, if you are unfamiliar with the learning lab, is when it's really getting into each other's classrooms together to learn together. And there are a couple different models of what that looks like. Math has been doing a lot of work. And so I'm going to let Math lean into this in just a moment to describe it a little bit more of what they've been doing personally or as a department. But making time for these learning labs, we will have cassettes, we'll have materials ready to roll to support you and your leadership team to help make sure that this happens. And it's goes back to that hexagon that we looked at the very beginning around that messy collaborative experimentation. We are trying things out together, we are learning together, we are adapting together, and we're doing it within our own jobs, with our own students, with our own materials. Rusty, what would you add?
I would add that it is our bias that the best learning for educators, all of us, including teachers, happens during the school day in classrooms with children. And learning labs are a structure that help us learn during the school day in classrooms with children. We do have structures that we've used. We would support the facilitator network, as Heather said, around what it actually looks like to enact a learning lab in a way that fosters messy collaborative experimentation. If you've been a part of the math work, especially this year, you have an idea of what that looks like. We'll be doing that again next year in similar ways, and also including literacy friends in that learning and in that work. Yes, Trish, you named it in chat. Perfect.
Okay, I think we're talking about your question a little bit, Heidi. So if not, we'll circle back to that. On the screen, you'll see a calendar of what this might look like over a month. And so day-to-day work is supporting the teaching and learning of our coaches, our early math specialists. They are focused in on coaching cycles, meeting the needs of teachers day to day, in and out. Um, and you'll see on the screen that they really help bring that connection between what's happening in the classrooms back to that leadership team and then back up to the state level. And on here, on the right-hand side, you'll see a calendar. We'll see that you might have learning labs on this Thursday and then this Monday, and that's where you've got that. Maybe it's in the afternoon after we have our leader facilitators lab, but that's really going to be up to you and when you make those happen within your schedule. You might have them 2 days in a row the same week. Every month, it's the last week of the month. That's really what works for you and what you know about your system. You'll
The,
also decide when you want to do your own educated learning. So that 45 minutes, maybe this is at your staff meeting. And so you've got to assign that at our staff meeting once a month or at one grade level meeting once a month. This is where our educator learning is going to happen. And you'll see this symbol here is showing that that's something that's determined locally by your math specialist or early literacy coach or your facilitator that's in that leader network. This will be static. So this is ran by the MESA math and literacy teams, and it's to build capacity within the network. So you'll see that it's twice a month, and it's that hour and a half. It's the second and fourth Tuesday of the month. And then you'll also see where this is also ran by MESA math and literacy teams, this local leadership teams, and that's an hour and a half once a month. So when you look at it on a calendar, you can see kind of how those dates would fall together. The pink and the purple would be set by MESA, The teal and blue would be set locally at your own time, your own discretion. Here are some examples of what those cassettes might look like. So, data reflection protocol or a leadership team meeting protocol routine. Rusty just named and went through a little bit of that. A teacher learning focus. If you are working on, for example, Rusty put on his, I've been using literacy, so I'll say the math. If you're working on a discussion structure, there might be a cassette that helps them to dig into that one. It might be creating a procedure for IREPs that you can take back with your team, and there's a process and a protocol that you can follow to say, what is ours going to look like? Or if we're developing look-fors. We also just named those learning lab routines. These would also be a cassette that you could take back and use locally. It's kind of like, I'd like to think of it as a plug and play resources that you can take and do locally when it makes sense for you. Another question that came up was, does the whole leadership team need to be there for the 4 full days? Um, Again, we want to meet your needs as much as possible. The ideal is that you have everybody there, but we know that that's not always going to work. So that's where if you have your principal and your facilitator or literacy leader that's coming, they can come and we'll have some of that work that you can then take back and do with your whole team at a time that makes sense. So we don't want to limit that learning. We want to make sure that it's available. It'd be great if your whole team could come, but we know that there's the complexities of living in a real school and a real system that doesn't always make that possible.
Jenny, your question about what's the structure for the dates, what you'll notice is those facilitator network dates are usually the second and fourth Tuesday morning for an hour and a half. The leadership teams are usually the second or third Wednesday morning of the month. Now, that is a pattern that you'll notice throughout. The dates are on the landing page. We'll pull that up here in a little bit. But the literacy team did do their best to try to avoid all the other things that they know are happening at the state level with all the different networks and things that are happening around the dyslexia law and PA 146. So there is a structure and it's not perfect, but there is a structure. Let's just pause for a minute because you're drinking from a fire hose and that was a lot of stuff. The thing that I put in chat just to kind of give us a chance to put something in chat is what's more clear now? What are some things that are standing out to you as like, oh, that makes more sense now from when the last time we put in chat? Or what new questions are surfacing for you? Take a second just to throw something in chat and we'll take a look at how we're doing as a team. Kylie, I think you're talking about like the teacher learning part. We're going to work within the context that you have. So, one thing that we do know is that time is always against us, and there are a lot of constraints around the amount of time for teacher learning. So, what we've done is tried to give recommendations and perfect world scenarios that you're going to have to adapt. If there is an hour for both math and literacy, if we're like, we want to tackle both math and literacy, that's great. You as a literacy leader and a math leader would have to talk about what does this look like to utilize that hour in productive ways. So I guess, Kylie, that's a way to say it depends.
Also, you'll see when we look at dates in a moment that if on the building leadership team dates, for many of them, if we're not staying for all day for literacy, we'll say that there's optional time. You may want to stay and extend your time. If I was doing literacy and math, I probably would opt, at least at the beginning, to extend our time into that optional continued time. And then you could always adjust later if you're finding that you had plenty of time to get through.
Leslie, good question. We're going to get to the who here in just a minute, so we'll pin that one for just a sec. Math and literacy friends, feel free to name things that you're seeing that stand out. If you see something that we should chat about. Kylie, good question. So Kylie's putting on the hat of a principal and saying, where should the principal be? Great question. Purple, local district leadership team. As Heather said earlier, principals should be a part of that team. Anytime they can engage in the teacher learning and learning labs is strongly encouraged. We know that's a challenge, but we really push for instructional leadership, and having principals a part of that work is vital. So correct, Kylie. And the second question, does this double if it's math and literacy? No, the leadership team will be both math and literacy. Really, we're designing the leadership team structure to not be specific to any content area or any grade level. So know that it's going to be systems learning for that first half, and then a routine to talk about instruction and how things are going for the second half. So know that that leadership team structure will fit any content, any grade level. And we're thinking about what does it actually look like to invite more people into that. So for those of you who are ISD leaders or local district leaders, and you're like, oh, I wish I could have so-and-so join this thing, that actually could be a good learning space for any role to jump into. But we'll create more clarity on that as the time goes on.
Rusty, that doubling question was more so for the pink and green. Would I have to attend math and literacy educator learning and math and literacy labs as a principal?
Good question. I think as we've found the last 2 years in the math work, as we've been doing a very similar system, the principals are going to join as many things as they can with the things that they have on their plate. So we've strongly nudged principals to be a part of everything, and they have to make informed decisions about the work. So Kylie, I don't think that's a perfect answer for what you're asking, but I think the nudge would be for leaders to be a part of the work. If we really hope to transform the way children learn, all of us have to see ourselves as learners and be a part of the work. And that's the stance that we always take. So Kylie, to paraphrase, as many of the things as possible with all the other things that are surrounding a principal's role.
Carrie asked about the cassettes, if they would be available at the beginning of the year or if they would be throughout the year. And I would say a little bit of both. Hopefully, Carrie, there will probably be some cassettes that are ready before the school year starts. But then as we build and as we do things, we'll be able to take the learning that just occurred and turn them into cassettes that can then go on to support you locally. So it's an and.
Yeah, and for math specifically, Carrie, we do have a lot of content that we've developed that we're working to turn into cassettes now, thanks to Sonia and Jess's leadership on the early math team. And the local district leadership team will actually be turned into something usable after the meeting because we'll be recording that first 45-minute chunk, and then the routine will be something that we'll use every month. So that recording is what we'll need to actually create the tool. So the leadership team will definitely happen after the meeting. As Trish said in chat earlier, it takes us about 24 hours to turn it from a meeting into something usable. So know that that's the timeline for those.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump into the next chunk. And I know there's a lot of questions. Like Heather said, we do have an FAQ and a process to collect them so that we can create a document that summarizes all the questions that we have. So know that that's coming as well. So what we've done up to this point is spent all of our time on what does it look like at the local district level. We're going to go up a layer to the regional level, which will be an opportunity for us to create some clarity in the facilitator network. Who are those math leaders and who are those literacy leaders? And what is their role in all of this work? The summary quickly, which you see on the landing page structure on that first page, is These facilitators, these math leaders and literacy leaders are the bridge between the state level work and the local district. So think about them as a support to get the content from the state level to the local district level and to support the enabling conditions at the local level. Take a second to read what's on the screen. And we've had questions of who are these people? And that's what this slide is going to help us better understand. I'll speak to what the math roles could be that are the facilitators, and then Heather, feel free to jump in for the literacy side. In mathematics, we know that we've had early math specialists for 2 years now, and those roles, pending the funding going through, which we haven't seen the budget yet, so that's a huge asterisk for us, but let's assume it to be true that there will be funding. It will be an opportunity to continue the role of early math specialist. Those roles are ISD housed. And so when we think about that role, that is an ISD role that partners with a local district to support this work to take place. In addition to that role that's grant funded, there are a lot of roles that exist across the state that do this kind of work already. So I think about math consultants. If you have a local district math coach, an assistant principal that's in charge of instruction, any other ISD roles or local roles can serve in this space. What will have to happen, though, is a reimagining of how we enact that role. So if Trish Dunn is a math coach and has a full plate already with all kinds of things that she does to support a district, this is actually going to push some of the things off of her plate and add new things to it that are based on this specific system. So I think one thing, as we've done this work in math over the last year, where we've invited people in to serve as this regional support or this bridge between the state and the local, know that we have specific things that these roles are going to be able to do to support the local district. And we can't just add this to an already full plate. So if you're a consultant or at an ISD, or if you're an ISD leader, that role is a perfect role to serve in this, but they can't continue to do all the things that they've been doing the last 2 years and take this on at the same time. So I think that's a big thing to name for us. In short, for mathematics, there needs to be a role. It could be an early math specialist that's funded by legislated funding, assuming that goes through. It could be an ISD math consultant. It could be a local district or ISD coach. It could be a continuous improvement person at the ISD or local district level. It needs to be someone who has the time and space to learn about teaching and learning mathematics and support teachers and leaders to bring those things to life in classrooms across the state. That was a lot of words. Heather, what would you say about literacy leaders?
Well, with all of those words you just shared, I would say take that and put it right over here as well, that we want to make sure that whoever takes this role on is someone that can have the time dedicated to doing this work, and be thinking about that calendar that we looked at, making sure that there's time allocated to be able to do those duties within your day. So that might be an ISD early literacy coach or an ISD consultant, whether that's a literacy consultant, or as Rusty mentioned, it could be like an improvement facilitator. This work is going to be, you'll see that it's very integrated with MyKIP and improvement processes with that inquiry cycle implementation plans. So having someone like that on your team or to lead could be a consideration as well. And then the local leader. So literacy, it could be a local leader, so a literacy coach from the building, the curriculum director, or the principal. And, we've talked a lot about that district connection. So I want to encourage you that as you're thinking, if you're a building leader that's here today, like talking to your district superintendent or curriculum director or whoever that is, and thinking through what does this look like for us? And then also that ISD connection, that's important as well. And we'll talk through that a little bit more in a couple slides, but that ISD early literacy coach is a really great candidate for this, as well as our ISD consultants. So those are all options for you locally.
That specific role will have a couple of teams or meetings, networks that they're a part of. One, so that math or literacy facilitator will be a part of the building leadership team. So we know that that will be true. And they will also be a part of math and literacy facilitator network. So know that that person, whoever is identified, whether it's an early math specialist, a literacy consultant, a math consultant, whatever the role is, they will be a part of the building leadership team, and they will also be a part of the network where the math and literacy teams work alongside them to continue to build all of our capacity to support this, both system work and teaching and learning work.
So I don't see it in the chat, but one of the questions might be, if I'm an ISD facilitator, can I facilitate more than one team? Rusty, what would you say?
With some creativity, probably. So if we're joining on the same day and we're working with a leadership team as we're streaming the stuff, could those teams work together? Yes, probably. If we have the meetings on different dates, if we're not all jumping on that thing, I think it's possible to join a building on one side of the county and a building on another side of the county on different dates. Those things are possible and will take a little creativity as we think about what this actually looks like in the weeds down in like, how do I actually bring this to life? What we see on the screen now is an opportunity to step up quickly one more layer from the regional, the math and literacy leaders to the state level teams. So I mentioned I'm a part of the team that's on the left side of that, the early math team, alongside Trish, Jess, and Sonia, who are also here. They're waving at you now. And Heather is a part, yeah, nice waves. Heather is a part of the literacy systems team, who is probably joined by Rich and Melissa. Michelle Goley is also a part of the team who is not able to be here this morning. Heather, am I missing people that you would want to name?
Yeah, Shelley Gohl and
Gosh.
Dr. Kaylani Dunsmore.
Yes, thank you. So know that there are people who are working at the state level to provide resources, provide learning, and really walk alongside all of this work. And as you see on the screen, the work of our teams is to support the facilitator network, to create the resources and tools for the facilitator network and local districts to feel success and continue to learn throughout the school year. Heather, what else would you say?
That I did not name Aaron Pell. So I want to ensure that I go back and name Aaron Pell as well. But yes, it would be a collaborative team effort that's leading the learning to support at that regional and then at the local level. And it's having these levels allows us to have that feedback loop, which is going to be really important for us moving forward. And so that we can respond to what you're finding in the classroom and we can modify. And so when we go back to the question about will we have all the cassettes available at the beginning of the year? Or do they come throughout? Part of being able to respond is creating those cassettes that are needed in the moment based on what we're finding when you have your leadership team routines, and that's lifting up into that regional level and then lifting up into the state level for those feedback loops.
On the slide, you see something that we've already run into before, but we're going to center in on the things that are at the bottom of the screen, which is who is supporting, facilitating, and carrying out these meetings. On the left-hand side, you see the facilitator network and the local district leadership team, and you see the early math and literacy team logos there. Those are the meetings that our teams are going to facilitate. So if you've been a part of the math work, you know that we had our Tuesday morning meetings the last 2 years. That's the meeting that's in blue. That's the one that will continue to create learning spaces for all of us to learn about the work. That will be led by the math and literacy teams. And then the local district leadership team, as we've said before, we will stream that across the state for any teams that are able to jump onto the stream and also create the cassette for teams that are unable to have that time work for them. Heather, on the right.
Oh. Yeah, so on the right-hand side again, those are those local, when we looked at that calendar, those are the ones that you're determining where that fits within your current structure, or you, as you plan forward, you'll want to plan for how might we modify our structure to make sure that we have time for these things embedded within our days and our months.
And we're going to bring us real soon to the finish line, and then we'll kind of open it up to look at the landing page, talk about a couple of things, surface more questions, and talk about the technical details. So we'll get into additional details. This is a slide that you have seen before. I think it went too quick.
It's,
Oh, Heather and
it
I are
was me,
struggling.
sorry.
Here we go. This is a slide you've seen before. I think there was a question in chat that was around this again, which was, this is not for everyone. This is for districts who have the interest and the need to put this kind of system in place, and ISDs who are ready to walk alongside districts to support this work to happen. So know that it is an opt-in opportunity, similar to what it's been in math. For literacy, this is probably feeling really new for all of us. And I think Heather would say that for districts and ISDs, along with literacy coaches who want to try to partner in this new way, this is an opportunity for you. Heather, I put words out there for literacy. Would you add or subtract any?
No, I think we're good.
One thing that some groups have found helpful is this information. I think it's here. You can read it, and we'll share the slides later. For all of us, we'll link them on the landing page. I think the big thing that I want to name on this slide is that this is a partnership with MAISA, math and literacy teams, with ISDs, and with local districts. And so the things that you see on the unacceptable side are any one of those three layers not being a part of the work and not being informed. So there is not a world where the MAISA literacy and math teams will partner with a district without the involvement and conversation with the ISD. So if you're a local district leader here, know that connecting with a GELN member or an ISD leader whom you work closely with, that is really important to us, because we cannot do this work without any one of these three layers missing. So keep that in mind as we think about and talk about this work. The structure of state level ISD for regional support and local district carrying out of the work is vital. Heather, anything else you want to name on this specific slide?
No, I just want to echo what you mentioned about that everybody at all layers should be involved in that. From the MESA standpoint, we will reach out to ISDs once you have signed up and expressed interest, and let them know that they've got a building that's interested, but we also encourage you to do that initial step in reaching out as well.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, and so when we think about the flexibility of the work, again, there were some questions around what are the requirements. So when we think about that leadership team, acceptable, you've got an engaged principal, you have a math or literacy facilitator. Hopefully we have a few ideas about who that might be after we've gone through that. And then teachers, if possible. And we talked a little bit about what's intended with that as well. But unacceptable would be if you don't have a leadership team together, or a leadership team that no one's attending the facilitator network, or a leadership team with no principal, this work is not for you. When we think about that principal educator learning, the principal is participating in that collaborative learning. As Rusty shared earlier, we know that you might not be in every setting, but overall as a trend, you are engaged in the planning and working through that learning with your staff. And then local routines or events are provided to support educator learning. Unacceptable is the principal does not attend the collaborative learning. And when we think about that collaborative, that's that time, that leadership team that we're coming together and doing the learning, the principal needs to be there. But when that comes to educator learning, that's where I was talking a little bit about they might be involved in some, but might not be able to make all of it. And we understand that. And then unacceptable learning happens only within the MESA monthly meetings. The specialist coach, acceptable. Facilitator network is literacy leader or coach, math specialist. Unacceptable is no facilitator. Getting into that shared vision, Acceptable would be math framework or literacy framework, loose and tight expectations, local enabling conditions, and working towards those, and then principal accountability for implementation. And you can see the unacceptable on the right-hand side. And then the cycles and labs, what we're looking for is engaging in those learning labs for math and or literacy and engaging in literacy coaching cycles. For those of you that are interested in the work and you don't have a framework yet or loose and tight yet, August 13th and 14th, we are offering an opportunity to get that started before the rest of the series kicks off. And then we will also have time throughout the year next year. If you are not ready for this fall date to kick off, but you'd like to join in the future, we will be offering more of these next year that would be preparing you for a cohort 2. The other thing to note is there was a question around 612 in the chat. If you are here and you're interested in the 612 piece, if we get funding, once the funding has come through, you've heard Rusty talk about funding earlier, but for the literacy side, if our funding is expanded to 612, there will be a entry point that we will get you prepared and ready to join the rest of the team for launching in like a November, December timeframe. So you would be able to join the cohort later, but we would do some additional learning to help you get caught up. In that document, the landing page that Rusty shared earlier, on the last couple pages, you will find the dates for next year. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see the Math and Literacy Facilitators Network dates. Those are for that team that's coming together. They're the leaders of the building leadership team. They are meeting those twice a month. And you'll see in the left-hand side, that's when we're meeting together for that 45 minutes. Math will continue to learn. And then in literacy, you'll see those days where there is required coaching network after or targeted literacy learning for those of you that are ISD literacy coaches or literacy coaches that engage in the coaching network. So you'll see those in the furthest right column, so you can keep those all together in your mind. On the right-hand side, you'll see the building leadership team dates. Those are the ones where you're coming together with your leadership team, if at all possible. Again, you can do that in your building. We Zoom those into your space, or you might meet at an ISD if there's several teams working together with the ISD, and you'll see that's from 8:30 to 10. The ones that extend all the way across in green, those are our 4 full literacy learning days. And then on the other days, you'll see where it says optional work time to extend. So someone asked earlier about if we're doing math and literacy, might we want a little more time? That's where I mentioned maybe leaning into that extra optional work time. And even on the days that we have the literacy all day, you'll see that it still says math may want to stay and work until 11:30. And part of that is too, we know that if you got subs for the day, having that half day sub is a little easier than trying to have the subs for only an hour and a half. It might work better for your system. Again, local context. And at the bottom, you see that 612 note. So I did a slide too early responding to the question in the chat, but there will be that on-ramp if the funding is provided. Okay, do we want to pause here, Rusty, or move into the next step? What are your thoughts? We're getting close, so we can probably move.
Yeah, and I
forward.
there's only like 2 things left, and I think they're pretty straightforward, and then we'll just open it up to see what questions surface. One thing that Heather has on the screen now is that we have a form that you can submit questions to, and the plan for this, we've already started one, but we plan to take the questions that are submitted on this form and adding them to the FAQ document that will be out there. So I know like there's a bunch of questions in the chat. Some of those may have been answered by now. Some of them might not have been, and that's okay. Just submit the questions on the FAQ or on this form. It'll then make it to the FAQ, which will link on that landing page as well. So know that that exists. Just put the link in chat as well. It is also and will be on the landing page so that you can continue to submit questions as they surface. As you would expect, you can also send an email to myself or Heather or any other members of our teams to find a time to meet if you want to meet to talk about it, or answer questions via email. The last slide that you see, which is a page from the landing page, is how you communicate that there is interest and you want to engage in this work next year. So the form is pretty simple, where it says who's the person submitting, what is your role, what is the building or buildings that might want to be a part, what ISD are you a part of. So it's something that if you're like, yes, we're in, we want to do literacy, we want to do math, or we want to do literacy and math, that's basically what this form has on it. That's linked on the landing page, so that when you're ready and have talked to the people and made sense of this in ways that support your planning for next year, feel free to grab this form and submit the information. That's how we know who's in, who's a part of this, and we can start to work together. Heather, I'm wondering, I think that's the end of the slides, but I wonder if we want to pull up that landing page. Are you able to do that and see, and we can just kind of skim through what's there? And I think more importantly, maybe, is how do we find it? So maybe just walk us through the, like, going to the website, finding the form. This might be your first time doing it too. So this, I'm putting you on the spot.
Am I still sharing my screen right now?
You are.
So you want me to pull this up, right?
Yeah, what I was wondering for everyone, because they're going to wonder how they find the things later once we're done with this. So I might, Heather, if you're cool with me sharing my screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to steal it. Everyone should be able to see my screen now. And what you see on the screen is mathessentials.org. We also have a website for literacy, that is literacyessentials.org. And on those websites, you'll see on each of them a tab that says landing pages. So we're on the mathessentials.org. I'm going to click landing pages. We have a lot of landing pages that support the work that we've been doing in math. The one that takes you to the Canva doc that we've looked at throughout this whole opportunity this morning is 2627 Math and Literacy Collaborative. If I click on that, it takes me to that Canva. So just know that we're going to continue to add stuff to this. We'll add the FAQ. We'll add more clarity based on the questions we get. And when you are like, ooh, I wonder what I need to do or what information I can find to share with people, this is the place to go. Go to the website, click on landing pages, and then click on this. It'll take you to the Canva. And then you are well aware, because we've perused it quite a bit this morning, all of the information that we've went through this morning is there, along with page 6 being the thing that you need if you're like, yes, we want to continue the conversation and we want to be a part of this work. The QR code takes you to the form, and there's also the bit.ly that takes you to the form to submit interest. All right, we have 6 minutes remaining. Heather is bringing something up.
I just wanted to show where it was on the literacy side. So it's right here. Here are our landing pages. So same thing, and then you'll see it right there.
Thanks, Trish. Through the websites in the chat, click on landing pages and you'll find the resources. We'll maybe take a second to see what questions are also surfacing now that we're kind of at the end of the information that we hope to share this morning. Feel free to post something in chat that is a current question, and then know that we'll grab the chat so we can add these to the FAQ. And also you have that link to that form that you can submit them after this meeting is over. Jenny, deadline, there's no specific date. We know, though, that summer is coming soon. And so end of this month, I think, is the goal. Obviously, if we're like, oh, we need to get through the time with students before we can sit down as leaders and really talk about this, that might take us into the first or second week of June. That's fine, too. As we get closer and closer to July, though, that will become difficult to get all the together is my hunch. So as soon as possible, I guess, is the answer. By the second week of June is probably the latest time at which submitting will be possible. And if a specific date, Jenny, maybe we can work on that too. If a specific date would be helpful, we're happy to talk that out. Michelle, great question. So readiness is a thing. Yes, with always an asterisk in the state of Michigan around if there is funding. This work is supported by funding that's legislated for both literacy and math. We're aware of the context of funding in the state of Michigan. We're awaiting the budget that should be dropping, fingers crossed, in the next month. And we hope to see the funding continue to be in there to support this work. So there's always an asterisk to this work. It depends on Lansing. It depends on how we determine the work should be funded statewide.
So Michelle, I see a question around, will we have like another opportunity in the future? And yes, the plan is to continue to offer this in the future. And if you have districts that just aren't ready or you just kind of want to see, that's okay. We will offer more of those onboarding opportunities in the future for a cohort too. So hopefully that helps. Christy, yes, the building leadership team, the 8:30 to 10 will be that live Zoom portion for the learning. And then there will be that 8:30 to 9:15 will be zoomed in, and then that 9:15 to 10 o'clock will be that leadership team routine that Mesa will provide you a routine that you can do locally to help you think about what's happening in your classroom.
Heather has a question about the approved list. And maybe I don't know if that's one we have a quick answer to, or it's one that we want to think more about. Feel free just naming it for you to take a look at.
Yeah, I appreciate you lifting that, Heather. I think that might be one that we want to put can answer a little better in the FAQ. It's a little bit longer of an answer. But I will put that in the FAQ. So
all right, we are at the 10 o'clock hour. Appreciate all of you being able to jump on. We know that there will be more questions. Don't hesitate to reach out. The landing page will continue to evolve. So know that you can continually go there to get more information. And we'll be in touch. And if you have questions, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out. What would you add as we close?
just thank you for being willing to think through something different with us as we move through this next stage. And we're really excited about the work. So looking forward to connecting with all of you in the future. And please don't hesitate to reach out. We will have the FAQ coming that will answer some of the questions that were brought up today. We'll try to recapture those and maybe some that we didn't have time for or that have come up in other settings. So looking forward to connecting in the near future.